What is a World War II fact that no one will believe, but is completely true? The chief chemist at the Vemork heavy water plant in Norway asked the Germans for a week's holiday. Because he had been diligent and cooperative, this was granted. He went immediately over the border to Sweden, flew to UK, where he gave MI6 detailed information about the plant, then flew back in time to be at work on Monday morning. The subsequently successful operation, Gunner's side used as accurate information to successfully destroy the factory and thus end Nazi hopes of an atomic weapon. Sadly, Leif Tronstad was killed fighting with the Norwegian resistance in 1945. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. was a brigadier general and the assistant division commander of the 4th Infantry Division during World War II. He led the first wave onto Utah Beach. He was the oldest person and the only general to storm the beaches of Normandy. His own son, Quentin Roosevelt, too, was a captain and landed at Omaha Beach. When he was assigned to help plan the invasion, he basically begged to participate, and he was finally given permission. Imagine the president's son, walking with a cane and only armed with a pistol, directing troops and leading them over the sea wall to safely set up the invasion. Whole family of badasses. Deputy Führer Rudolf Hess was a really weird guy, even by Nazi standards. Other high-ranking Nazis would often make fun of him behind his back because they would catch him attempting shot like telekinesis, pyrokinesis, telepathy, and more. He really believed in that stuff, and nobody really liked him very much except the guy who counted, Hitler. Oh, add to this, Heinrich Himmler believed in witchcraft. He believed that a suspected ancestor of his, Margareth Himmler, was burned for being a witch in the 1600s. He also said that you can still observe an unusually large amount of ravens at sites where witches were executed back then. He also believed in Atlantis, thinking the Atlanteans were the ancestors of the Aryan race. According to him, they were a race of giant humans that after the fall of Atlantis went across Europe, where their descendants would become Aryans, and Asia, where they eventually settled in Tibet. In 1938, Himmler sponsored an expedition to Tibet where Nazi researchers measured head sizes and body proportions of Tibetans. They concluded that they must be a mix of Mongolians and Europeans who possess certain Aryan traits and can be treated as an allied race after the Endsieg. Overall, he was obsessed with Germanic folklore, and I think I remember reading he wanted to establish a kind of Neo-Germanic religion in Germany. The Japanese actually bombed the U.S. mainland, not just Pearl Harbor. They used high-altitude balloons with incendiary devices, launched all the way from Japan to try to start forest fires in North America. Fugo balloon bombs. The minesweepers used before D-Day were generally fishing boats staffed with merchant navies, some of who were only 17 years old. The mines were moved with broom handles. Source: one of the kids working on these boats told me. R.I.P. Reg. Bonus notes: they used fishing boats because the Germans would not waste a torpedo on them. Edit. And seeing other comments, probably because they were wooden and would be less like clay to activate mines. The only recording ever made of Hitler speaking in a normal conversational voice was made in 1942 when he traveled to Finland to, basically, apologize to the Finnish leadership for vastly underestimating Soviet industrial capacity. Most of the sea mines and torpedoes of the time used magnetic detection as their trip mechanism. You wouldn't need to physically hit the mine to trigger them. You just need to pass a metal object close by. To defeat this mechanism, the navies of the day would run electrified wires around the circumference of the ship to neutralize the ship's magnetic signature. This was called degaussing. The British utilized filmmakers and magicians for some aspects of subversion and espionage. A great example of this was them building a fake city of lights in North Africa in order to draw away German bombing raids. Another example was a fake D-Day. The Allies staged a fake invasion force in a position that would indicate they were invading somewhere other than Normandy. They used inflatable tanks, planes, and other equipment made from plywood, paper, and anything else cheaply available. The Polish Anders army had a brown bear fighting the Nazis with the rank of corporal. His name was Wojciech. After the nuclear bomb on Nagasaki, Japan, on August 9, 1945, Japan stayed on top of the list of the most nuked countries in history for exactly 325 days before that title went back to the U.S. The only deliberate use of chemical weapons in Europe during WW2 was done by Polish troops on September 8, 1939, by using mustard gas grenades to demolish a bridge. 2 German soldiers died as a result. The last German troop to surrender did so on September 6, 1945, for months after the German surrender because they were stuck on Svalbard building and maintaining a weather station. During the Battle of Idar Castle on May 5, 1945, German troops and U.S. troops fought together against SS troops. Japan experimented with the bubonic plague in Unit 731 on Chinese civilians. A Scottish soldier landed on D-Day and played the bagpipes while wearing a kilt up and down Sword Beach. The largest volunteer army in history was the British Indian Army during WW2. Over 2.5 million men volunteered to serve in the Allied forces without conscription. Quite possibly this is a record that may never be broken. 1 main gun on a Yamato-class battleship, Yamato or Musashi, weighed 147.3 metric tons. The complete 3-gun turret mount weighed around 2,500 to 2,774 tons, while an average-sized destroyer of the era, such as the American Fletcher class, had a full load displacement of approximately 2,500 tons. There was a Native American warrior who joined WW2 and was given tasks in order to become a chief. These tasks included touching an enemy, stealing a bunch of horses from the enemy, leading a war party, and taking an enemy's weapon. And he managed to do all 4 to be promoted to war chief of his tribe. I highly respect him for accomplishing this. Depends on people's knowledge of the war, but both Britain and Germany had jet planes by 1941. Multiple countries had guided bombs. Almost all major powers had infrared scopes for weapons, even if the Soviet Union and Britain didn't use them especially extensively. And German and American forces fought alongside each other, a few times against hardcore Nazis. Hitler's nephew fought for the U.S. Navy. His nephew, William Patrick Hitler, moved to America before the war, joined the Navy, and fought against his uncle. You can't make that up. A Japanese officer named Hiro Onoda kept fighting World War II for 29 years after it ended. The Allied dumped a corpse with fake plans about an invasion of Greece off the coast of Spain. These plans fell into the hands of the Axis, who bolstered defenses there, which allowed the invasion of Sicily to proceed with minimal casualties. The film, The Art of Ungentlemanly Warfare, is based on this. The only Japanese bomber pilot to successfully bomb the contiguous United States later visited the area he had bombed and presented the 2 people with his families 400-year-old katana incendiary bombing campaigns against the civilian populations of Hamburg and Dresden. In contrast to how they treated Western POWs, the Nazis killed a majority of their Russian prisoners. A Soviet soldier taken prisoner had a 50 to 75% change of dying in captivity. Second to the Jewish civilian population, Soviet POWs were the non-combatant group most extensively murdered by the Nazis. That's all for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. I plan on using my real voice for narration soon. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.